This is based on a true story. Have you ever experienced anything like this? Let us know in the comments. You don't ever forget the first time sleep paralysis hits you. It's like waking up inside a nightmare, and the only thing you can do is lie there and hope it ends. Most people say it feels like being trapped. Some weight on your chest, a pressure in the room. But what happened to me? It was so much worse. It started in my late teens, after I moved into my first apartment. A little studio on the top floor of an old, creaky building downtown. It was cheap. The kind of place that's affordable, because nobody really wants to live there. But I was young, broke, and the landlord seemed desperate to have someone take it. The first few nights were fine. The usual moving pains, a few boxes, sleeping on a borrowed mattress. But by the end of my first week, I began to notice the apartment had a certain energy. Not the sort you can see, just a feeling, like being watched. I'd laugh it off, chalking it up to the creaks and groans of an old building settling at night. But on the 7th night, everything changed. I remember the evening perfectly. Rain tapping against the window, the glow of my phone screen reflecting on the ceiling, the world outside muffled and distant. I drifted off to sleep just after midnight. Then I woke up. But I wasn't really awake, at least not in any way that made sense. My eyes were open. I could see the ceiling, the pale streetlight leaking through the curtains, but my body, it was frozen. Not heavy, not numb, just locked. I tried to move my fingers, to scream, to even blink, but nothing happened. That's when I noticed it. The cold. It started at the tips of my fingers, almost like someone had pressed a block of ice against my skin. It crawled up my arm. Slow, deliberate, and terrifying. I tried to shout, but all that came out was a whisper in my mind. Then I saw it, a shadow at the edge of my vision. I tried to turn my head, but all I could do was stare straight ahead. The shadow inched closer, a shapeless form against the dark. I felt the cold spread across my chest, as if invisible hands were wrapping themselves around me, squeezing tighter and tighter. For what felt like hours, I lay there, helpless, suffocating under the weight of something I couldn't see. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it was gone. My body jerked upright, sweat soaking my sheets. I gasped, the cold still lingering in my arms, as if something had truly touched me. I stayed awake the rest of the night, lights on, terrified to close my eyes. The next morning, I convinced myself it was just a nightmare. Sleep paralysis, I read online, was common, especially for people under stress. Maybe moving had unsettled me more than I realized. I went about my day, refusing to let the fear control me. But every night, as I lay in bed, the memory of those cold hands haunted me. I began sleeping with a lamp on, music playing quietly from my phone, anything to distract me. For a week, nothing happened. No dreams, no strange sensations, just restless sleep and an overwhelming sense of dread. But then, it came back. This time, I was ready. Or so I thought. I'd read tips online. Keep your mind calm, try to wiggle your toes, focus on your breathing. I fell asleep with these mantras in my head. But sleep paralysis doesn't care about your plans. I awoke in the dead of night, paralyzed once more. My room was darker than usual. Although the lamp I'd left on, now cold and dead. My phone was silent, battery drained. I stared at the ceiling, panic rising in my throat. Then I felt it. The cold creeping up from my toes this time, inching along my legs. The shadow appeared again, closer this time. I could make out the shape of a face. No features, just deep, empty hollows where eyes should be. Its hands, thin and impossibly long, reached out toward me. The cold became unbearable, seeping into my bones. I tried to scream. I begged in my head, "Please stop, please." But the shadow just pressed down, its icy grip tightening around my chest. My vision swam, stars exploding behind my eyelids. I was sure I was dying. And then, as if on cue, the pressure released. I shot up, gasping, the room spinning around me. The cold lingered, a numb ache in my chest. I could still feel the ghostly fingers, as if they'd left an imprint on my skin. I couldn't ignore it anymore. This wasn't stress or lack of sleep. Something was in that apartment with me, something cold and hungry. I called my mother the next day, voice shaking as I told her what happened. She listened quietly, then asked the question I'd been dreading. Has this happened before? To anyone else? I didn't know. I'd never bothered to ask the landlord about the building's history, but now I needed answers. That afternoon, I visited the old woman in the apartment next to mine. She'd lived there for nearly 30 years, and if anyone knew anything, it was her. When I described my experiences, her face grew pale. "You're not the first, you know," she whispered, eyes darting to the window. "That apartment's always been cold. People don't stay long. They say there's something in the walls, something that likes to touch you while you sleep." Her words sent a fresh chill through me. That night, I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. Sometime after 2 a.m., as I drifted between wakefulness and sleep, I heard a soft, rhythmic tapping at my window. 3 slow knocks. Pause, then 3 more. I sat up, heart pounding. The street below was empty, rain drizzling under the streetlights. I tried to convince myself it was just a branch, but there were no trees near my window. The tapping continued, soft but insistent. I wrapped myself in blankets, shivering, and tried to ignore it. Eventually, exhaustion won out. I fell asleep. I wish I hadn't. This time, the paralysis struck with a vengeance. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The cold hands gripped me, tighter than ever. But this time, the shadow wasn't at the edge of my vision. It was right above me, face inches from mine. I could feel its breath, icy and sour against my cheek. Its hands pressed down on my shoulders, pinning me to the mattress. I stared up, tears streaming from my eyes, and for the first time, I heard it speak. A single word, guttural and twisted, rasped in my ear. Mine. The room spun, darkness pressing in at the edges of my vision. I thought I was going to die. And then, as before, I snapped awake. The cold was gone, replaced by a searing pain in my shoulders where the hands had pressed. I scrambled out of bed, flicking on every light, shaking so hard I could barely stand. When I looked in the mirror, there were faint red marks, like fingerprints, on my skin. I became obsessed with finding out what was happening to me. I scoured the internet for stories of sleep paralysis, cold spots, ghostly touches. I read about the old hag, about shadow people, about entities that feed on fear. But none of them fit exactly. My shadow was different, more aggressive, more personal. I stopped sleeping in my bed, choosing instead to doze off in a chair or on the sofa with the TV blaring. But no matter where I slept, the paralysis followed me. Each time, the cold hands grew bolder, touching my face, wrapping around my throat, tracing icy patterns across my skin. The shadow would whisper things I couldn't understand, but always with that same malicious glee. I lost weight, grew pale, and my friends started to notice. They asked if I was sick, if I needed help. I lied, said I was just stressed from work. But inside, I was falling apart. One night, desperate and terrified, I called an old friend who believed in the paranormal. She arrived at my apartment with sage, holy water, and a handful of protective crystals. Together, we performed a cleansing ritual, lighting candles, chanting prayers, filling the air with the scent of burning sage. For the first time in weeks, I felt hopeful. That night, I slept deeply. No paralysis, no shadows, just peace. But it didn't last. 3 nights later, the shadow returned. This time, it didn't bother with the subtlety of sleep paralysis. I woke to the feeling of hands, real, tangible hands, gripping my ankles. I looked down and saw them. Pale, translucent fingers, long and spindly, clutching tightly. The shadow hovered at the foot of my bed, its hollow eyes locked on mine. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. All I could do was weep as it slowly climbed up my body, pressing its cold hands against my chest. It leaned in, face inches from mine, and whispered, "You belong to me." A wave of terror crashed over me. I fought with every ounce of willpower I had, finally managing to jerk my body free. I screamed, falling from the bed onto the floor. The shadow vanished, leaving only a cold spot where it had been. I knew I couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. But moving out isn't as easy as packing a bag and leaving. Not when you have nowhere else to go. So I decided to spend one last night, determined to confront whatever haunted me once and for all. I prepared myself as best I could. Protective charms, salt sprinkled across the doorways, every light blazing. I lay down on my bed, fully dressed, clutching a crucifix in my hand. Sleep came slowly, and with it, the paralysis. This time, the shadow was already in the room, sitting at the foot of my bed. Its hands were folded neatly in its lap, but I could feel the cold radiating from it, filling the space with icy dread. It didn't speak, it didn't move, it just watched me. Minutes, or maybe hours, passed. Then for the first time, I spoke to it. In my mind, I screamed, "Why are you here? What do you want?" The shadow's head tilted, its eyes widening. Suddenly, I was free. I leapt from the bed, racing to the door. The air felt thick, heavy, but I pushed through. I ran from the apartment, not stopping until I was several blocks away, gasping for breath under the pale light of dawn. I never set foot in that apartment again. I broke my lease, forfeited my deposit, and crashed with friends until I could find a new place. The sleep paralysis stopped. The cold hands vanished. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm lying alone in the dark, I swear I can feel a chill crawl up my arm. A reminder that some things never really leave you. I don't know what that shadow was or why it chose me. Maybe it's still there, waiting for the next unlucky soul to move in. Or maybe it followed me, lurking just out of sight. All I know is this: sleep paralysis is real. The things you see in that half-waking world can hurt you. And sometimes, when you feel a cold hand on your shoulder in the dark, it's not just your imagination. If you found this story terrifying, like I did, drop us a like and share with your friends, and please consider subscribing for more spooky true stories. Share your own experience in the comments below. And if you have a story like this, share that too. Maybe it can feature on our channel. Until next time, sleep well.